Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Strand Tennis Center podcast, filled with tips, advice, tennis, not tennis, just life advice too, whatever you need. Like it on YouTube, share it on the podcast as well. Thank you.
Welcome to the Strand Tennis Center podcast. We were lucky enough to have Christian Alshon he was on a Zoom call, he was in Atlanta, he had a tournament. He's a professional pickleball player, he is 23 years old, he's top 10 in the world, and he beat Ben Johns last week in the quarterfinals of the Atlanta Open, and we had a few minutes to be able to talk to him via Zoom. So hopefully it helps in regards to pickleball. He's a very great tennis player, and we'll see why he changed and decided to do this instead of play tennis. And so it was an interesting conversation with him, and hopefully you enjoy it. That's my conversation with Christian Alshon. Thanks. So describe to me how Ben Johns plays and what makes him so difficult. You know, you just described, I think we recorded it, how difficult it is to beat him. More people have won gold medals. Why is he so good at pickleball right now? Why is he the best?
After I played Ben Johns, my respect for him increased a lot. Because you watch him play and it doesn't look too special or like that much is going on, but you play him and the ability to hit the right shot at the right time is just a lot harder than you would think in pickleball, and he has a really good ability to hit the right shot at the right time.
Okay. What is it? It's just his instincts. You think he know? Is it like when they say Federer knows to be in the right position and knows where you're going to hit the ball before, like he's just moving in the right direction before the ball is struck? Is that what you're kind of referring to? Those kind of instincts?
Yeah, I mean, not even about like movement or footwork. All right, let's get right into it.
Yeah, sure.
One of the biggest differences with tennis and pickleball, because I played tennis for 12 years.
Yeah, sure.
15 years, excuse me. And then pickleball for 1 year, almost. Tennis, if you can hit a good shot, you're fine. It doesn't matter where you hit it. If it's a good shot, you're doing okay.
Sure.
Forehand, cross court down the line, as long as it's good, you're doing all right. In pickleball, if you hit a perfect shot, you could lose the point because of it if it's not the right shot. And that doesn't happen in tennis.
Okay.
So that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest difference, that strategy comes into play more in pickleball than it does in tennis. Tennis has strategy, but it's super simple.
So context is more important. So if you hit a great shot in pickleball, but it's the wrong shot, you're probably in a worse position than you were before, basically.
100%.
Okay. So is that why, we can start from the beginning with UVA and all this stuff. Is that why, listen, there's different combinations. UVA is a great school, all this stuff. Is that why you're more into pickleball now than you were into tennis because of those facts? Or is it other things? Like what made you so, because you're obviously successful in tennis. I mean, you're playing for UVA. They just won the national championship. All that stuff. So was it just, go get into it, because I'm curious, because I played tennis, the whole thing. I played pickle, played college. I did the whole thing, all that stuff. And we always compare this. We have a pickleball facility here. You can see it. There's tennis. There's all this shit. And people go back and forth with it. So I'm really curious as to why. Yeah.
If you don't mind me talking, monologuing for like a minute.
Yeah, sure.
I'll give you like a brief summary of like my life story regarding tennis and pickleball. So I was just explaining this to someone, and my entire life, I've wanted to go pro in tennis. Like, from the moment I stepped on a court, the moment I played my first tournament and won it when I was 7, up until I was 15. At 15, I played Orange Bowl. I was the number 2 seed. I lost the first round. I was so upset, and I remember thinking, I'm never going to go pro in tennis. At the time, I was just upset. But for a long period after that, I believed that was the moment I stopped wanting to go pro. Because at one point, 15, you get older, start building a friend group, having a social life. And I looked and I kind of stopped having the aspiration of going pro. And I look back at that moment as the moment I stopped wanting to go pro. And when I started being more social. I started thinking like, hey, tennis isn't even that big of a sport. If you compare it to football, soccer, baseball, like any sport, it's the smallest one. Like, why would I want to go pro in a sport that nobody cares about? This is me at like 15, 16. So in my mind, I'm like, all right, let me just become a businessman. Whatever the heck that meant.
I get it.
15, 16. I was like, let me just be a businessman, make a ton of money, way more money than I could ever make in tennis. Way more money than anybody other than Roger or the top 3 are making in tennis, which honestly is probably more likely in business than tennis anyway. And for a few years, that was the plan, but I loved tennis, or I loved competing, and tennis allowed me to compete, like, on the spot. And I said I was the 2 seed at Orange Bowl. I was 2 in the country at the time. Shortly became 1 in the country after in 16s, after winning Winter Nationals. And I kept training through 18s, just didn't need to train a lot, would show up, would play practice games, would have fun. That was the key. As long as I could have fun, I could keep playing. I became 1 in the country in 18s in singles after winning Winter Nationals again. And I had been 1 in the country in doubles for a while, but doing that in singles just felt way more impressive because singles was objectively harder.
Sure.
Anyway, so I win Winter Nationals for 18 and under, become 1 in the country, commit to UVA. I go there and I'm like, I stopped. I'm not all in tennis, but I'm happy for the opportunities it's given me in life. Super excited because I wouldn't have gone into UVA without tennis. Like, I've had good grades, but they weren't great. Like, I didn't focus on them enough because I didn't have to. I had tennis. That's what being good at a sport will help you, or will let you do. Anyway, so go to UVA, and when I'm there, I care about tennis. I play 6. I don't lose a match at 6, so I'm undefeated. I keep winning, and at this point, I still care about my social life. I still care about academics. I have all 3 of them pretty equally weighted in my priorities. Tennis program, however, and the coach wanted me to be all in on tennis. And as I mentioned, I was I say what I think very often, and I told him I was very upfront about not being passionate about tennis, but that I like competing and that I would do it and that I would try 100% when I was on the court, and I did. I had a work hard, party hard mentality, and ultimately they didn't like the fact that I wasn't all in on tennis. So my time there was cut short, and after UVA I started looking for a better academic school because I was, I cared about all of them equally at the time, so I was like, all right, let's go academics. That's probably the most important out of the 3 if I want to go into business. So I go into my top schools are Yale, Princeton, and then Chicago. I don't get into the top 2, so I go into Chicago. First tennis season is canceled, don't get to play. Second tennis season, I get to play, and I start at position 2, quickly move up to position 1, and fast forward through the season, our team wins the first NCAA title. Not in tennis program history at the school, but in program history. No other D3 team at Chicago has won an NCAA title. So it was big for the school. I ended the season at 18-0. So I didn't lose a single match all season. I consider myself a big fish in a small pond. Okay. So just a refresh.
Yeah.
My coach, right after we won the title, talked to me and asked me, hey, Christian, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want to do with your life? And I said to him, I was like, I think I want to go pro pickleball. I didn't know what it is. Had known what it was for a couple years because of COVID 2020, but had only played a handful of times. I get back home 2 weeks later, set up a hit. The day after I get back, and I'm not sure if I said this or not already, but maybe either way. I played, I think it was June 13th that I played. I got back June 12th, 2022. And since that day, I have not, I'm being super serious when I say this, I have not gone a single day where the first thing on my wake up is not pickleball, and the last thing in my mind when I go to bed is not pickleball. It's an obsession.
Huh.
I would call it passion, but it's so close to that line of obsession that it's.
Huh. So how does just to break up, it's a great story, and just two questions regarding to that. I just read your post about that whole bio, and I'm curious as to why. Do you feel like you're getting questions as to why you did this, and do you feel like you have to kind of explain the reasoning because you have this tennis possibility? Obviously, tennis is a bigger sport right now than pickleball, more money, blah, blah, blah. You feel like you have to explain yourself because people are asking this question a lot?
I think that's kind of what ignited it, but at the same time, I think I had to just tell myself that as well. Like, I mean, people say it, but at the end of the day, like, as long as I know the truth, then I'll be fine. It helps if I just like I don't care if anybody sees that, but as long as I said my truth,
Yeah, sure.
like, I can go to sleep happy at night.
I get it. So, how did the Waters things happen? Because you said you started playing pickleball, and then all of a sudden you're playing with Anna Lee. Well, how'd you get that hookup for the doubles and then win the tournament?
So 2 weeks after I started playing, like June 13th, 2 weeks later, I played my first tournament, but it was like a money ball just put together by a handful of locals. And I was playing with this guy who I'd been training with like every single day. And we played doubles, and he's looking at the draw, and he's like, whoa, he's like, there's some serious pros in here. And I'm like, all right, let's beat him. I know I'm better. I know I'm better. Let's go. I talk a lot, but I like to think I back it up. So we played them in our last. There was a round robin and then like two finalists. We played them in the last round of the round robin. We play Annalise Waters and this guy Brandon Hutchman, who I played with this morning, and they destroy us. And after we had just kind of walked through a lot of these other games, and I was like, upset, to say the least. I didn't know anything about either of these people. To me, it was just some like 12-year-old girl who had just beat me. My ego was a little hurt. My ego was a little hurt, to be honest. So we play again in the finals because we had both made it to the finals. Same thing, we get destroyed. I'm pretty upset. Oh, what's funny is right after we played, Annalie asked me if I wanted to play a game of singles. And I was like, okay, redemption. She was a better player, I could tell from the two. I was like, redemption. We played. I beat her in singles after 2 weeks of playing, but she put on a great fight, and we played a lot since then. And in the beginning, it was kind of back and forth. I've surpassed it, or competitiveness, just because like serve return aspect, but. After that, I left. This mutual friend was like, "Hey, do you mind if I give you her number so because she wants to train with you?" And I'm like, "Fine," because it's hard to find people to train with, good players. As you can tell, I've been playing for a couple weeks, and I'm better than these people that have been playing for years.
Yeah.
Months. So a week, she asked me, and at this point, it's my birthday because I turned 23 on July 8th, and I'm gone. I'm like, oh, sorry, can't do it. And I was like, I had figured out who she was after, and I was like, damn, I'm obsessed with pickleball. Best girl in the world wants to play with me. How did I just miss this opportunity? A couple weeks later, same thing. Moneyball, different place, different people. They're there, and this time I played with her mom. So it was a round. It was they put you with different players, and I got put with Lee Waters, and I knew who she was, so I was like, my chance to prove myself. I think I did. The next day, they asked me if I wanted to train. I came, I trained with them, and ever since then, I've just been a consistent playing partner.
That's
because at this point, there's not too many people better.
So that leads to my question. How much, two questions out of that. You come as a tennis player. how quickly after you make the adjustment and go, or do you go in there and go, well, if these pickleball players, like most tennis players do that are at a high level, go, well, I'm going to be able to beat these people because, listen, most of them don't know racket sports really well. I'll beat them. When does it come to the point where there's going to be so many good tennis players playing pickleball that it kind of levels the playing field? And how quickly is the learning curve for you when you go out there and did you first go out there and say, listen, I'm going to bang these balls around and beat these people, and they go, wait a second, I've got to do something a little bit more subtle. I can't just play what I'm doing on the court. Like, how does that curve happen? Because you're a good racket sports player. Obviously, you're a great racket sports player, but you need a little bit of a curve to figure out the nuances of the game.
Yeah, I'd say, here, let me draw you.
Yeah, sure.
Just why not? Now I majored in economics, might as well use it. So,
Hey. Economics, you count all the money, too. Right, Santi?
right.
Let's see.
So, this is just very blunt.
Okay.
As you can see, like, time and skill.
Yep.
Like,
Sure.
you start, and it should probably even be higher than that. You should probably just start really high.
Okay.
The y-axis.
Yeah.
Like, you're automatically right at the top, and
Yeah.
then it doesn't really matter how much you play. It's just going to be slow progression
Okay.
after that.
Sure.
And that's what's been happening with me. Like, I started, 2 months later, I'm playing a tournament, and I feel like I'm right there with all of these pros. Like, I felt like that after 2 months. And now I've been playing for 11 months, and, like, a lot of them are still better than me at doubles. And singles is different.
Yeah, sure.
That's a whole thing that we can get into.
But do you feel like now you're saying you got up to this point, is there probably 10 people that are... Is there a separation in pickleball like there's a separation in tennis when Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal were just better than everybody? Is there a clear separation between like the top 4 people in pickleball, or is it closer than that?
It's probably very similar. I think even more than that is if you go outside the top 20 for women, there's a big drop, like 20 to 30.
Okay.
It's a big drop. And then for men, it's like if you go from like 50 to 100, it's like a big drop as well. So at the top, yeah, sure, there may be like a big separation between 1 and 2 on each side, but after that, like 2 to 10 or 3 to 10, I think the biggest drop is when you get deeper into the rankings.
Now, physicality, training-wise, smaller surface areas, smaller coverage, do you feel like you don't have to train the way you would normally train in tennis because you don't need as much cardio, you don't need as much, or do you feel like you're training just as hard?
Yeah, I mean, when I played tennis, I didn't really care a ton about being at my best physical level. Okay. And I was able to manage with, like, I would go in the gym, and because I always wanted to, like, look big like a bodybuilder. Who didn't? And so I would do a lot of, like, weightlifting that wasn't really helpful towards my tennis, but I was able to do it. I started playing pickleball singles. I would be dead, like, after one game, like, if I go all out. Because singles is, I think it's more movement, and I've thought this ever since I started, more movement than tennis, just singles, not doubles. Because the court is smaller, yes, but the time between shots is also less. Like, you can move stuff back and forth like 4 times within 8 seconds or 10 seconds. Whereas tennis, it's like shot takes a few seconds to get over the net and to come back. So I think it's just as much. Okay. In doubles, it doesn't matter. It matters, but you can be out of shape.
So what's your schedule like then? Are you training twice a day? You doing off-court work? You doing on-court? Like, is it very similar to how a tennis player would train? How's your schedule like?
Yeah, it's very similar. I don't have a personal trainer at the moment. I just finished college 3 months ago, so in the last 3 months I've changed my training schedule so that it's more towards a pro athlete. I actually personally did a ton of research about how pro tennis players train. Sure. And I've kind of made my training schedule off of that because it's like a ton of the same movement.
Yeah. So what are you doing? Are you doing, say, gym work in the more like what's the schedule full day wise? If you look at a regular schedule for you.
Yeah. So I mean, so what I've been doing for the last couple of months, ever since I finished college and I've been able to settle into a routine, is I wake up at 5 a.m. So I like to get all my work and random stuff. I do a lot of editing, social media stuff.
Sure.
I like to get that all out of the way by 7, so I can start training at 8. And ideally, I'll train 8 to 10. Then I usually have a call or two over the next couple hours. Then I do fitness. And I give myself 3 hours. I give myself 3 hours to work out. It's usually like an hour and a half of working out, 30 minutes of like cool down / dynamic. So it's at least 2 hours if I'm doing it right. Which today I did an hour and a half.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to do a cool down or foam roller stretch. I just stopped sweating, came right into this. Some days are like that. And then, so right now, let's just say it's 3 p.m. There are some days where I'll play again at 4. There are some days where I'll get a massage at 4. But either way, what I like to do is I like to start my day at 5 and end my day at 5.
Okay. Yeah. So speaking of the editing end and the social media end, I mean, it's such a value. I mean, Sissy Pass has got his vlog. Everybody is basically their own business. How much you think is that helping you in regards to how much bump are you getting that in regards to your career? Do you think it's really creating awareness for yourself?
I think it is doing a very good job. Very good job. Without that, I think so. That, along with being able to create a brand within myself, so I'm a flashy player. I've always liked to hit flashy trick shots, and the fact that I've been doing it for years, tennis made it very easy because pickleball is obvious. It's just an easier sport to play.
Yep.
So it's easier to hit trick shots too, which I love. Which is part of the reason I love the sport. Like, how many times are you going around the post?
Yeah.
In tennis, and I can do like a flea flicker, I can do a tweener like around the post if I wanted to. And then to answer your question about the YouTube, so like I've gotten over 250,000 views on my channel in the last 6 months or something, and that's more than outside of like 4 or 5 players. That's more than every single pickleball player combined. Like. And it's part to my brand that I've created, but I didn't really have a big following before pickleball. I had like 1,200 followers. I now have over 5,000, which is slow, authentic growth, which is you don't always see these things.
Yeah, that's the way you need it. So where do you think? And we had discussed this in our pre-interview questions. Pickleball. How big can this sport be? Like how much money, how much sponsorship money is going to go in? Do you see, we've discussed this, you've heard the podcast one time, where can 50,000 people watch this at one time? Do you think it can be that big a sport? Do you think it'd be a U.S. Open type of sport?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's a question that needs to be asked. And for the next 5 years, I'm going to say no.
Okay.
However, but the thing is, you got to realize between every other sport and pickleball is pickleball has just reached the surface. So, and the key to an audience is growing up with that sport. So we're not thinking about the next 5 years. We're thinking about 10 to 30 years from now, when kids who grew up with pickleball are gonna be wanting to watch it when they're older, because they can relate to it and they can have a personal connection to it, and that's the key, and that's why this sport is unlikely to go downhill for the next 30 years.
Well, I think like we discussed, I mean, the NBA in the 70s was on tape delay, the finals. No one gave a shit. The NFL, the Super Bowl wasn't even on TV the first year. So, look, these things take 30 years to happen. And it could be. Brady bought a team, LeBron bought a team. They're $1 million franchises. They could be $1 billion franchises in 30 years. It's possible. I mean, we never thought people were going to pay to watch people play Call of Duty either, but They got Call of Duty leagues as well. So, Fortnite as well. So it's. I think you're right. Short term, no. Long term, yes. And when it gets into schools, when it gets into high schools, again, when you have full scholarships for college teams to play pickleball, then it's going to start changing the landscape of everything because parents will be giving their kids more lessons. Parents will be putting it into the system. And then all of a sudden, all that money is going to flow. And I agree. I think long term, the sport can be really big. And because everyone can play it, it's not like watching Federer and you cannot do those things. You can feel like you get on the pickleball court and do a little bit more than you could do on a tennis court that you could do that Federer can't do, so to speak. Federer can do. So it's much more inclusive as well. So that, yeah. Do you,
it's not going to stop growing.
Yeah. So what's the biggest, if you were starting, like if you were in the same position you were in, what do you tell somebody that wants to, do they do both sports? What do they like, or do you just try everything, or do you say, hey, I mean, you seem so pumped up about pickleball that you'd probably gear them to pickleball, but what does a kid do that's in high school right now when there's no pickleball in college? Do they still play tennis and then go, all right, I'm going to go to the tour after I get a couple of years of experience? I mean, what do you do?
I mean, simply put, I think there's club pickleball at most, if not every college. So that's kind of that answer. And if you want to be competitive on a team, then you can't choose pickleball right there.
All right. When's the next tournament? Next week?
Yeah, going to Texas. Yeah.
So how does it feel to be like a professional like that? Do you love the experience of traveling and doing all that? Are you lonely? Like, who you with? Who you traveling with?
Yeah, right. So to deviate from your question, how does it feel to be like a professional athlete? You know, pickleball is like a very small of a sport in the scheme of things. So it's like, you know, feeling like a pro athlete if you're playing pickleball maybe isn't really like as sincere as football right now. And that's fine. Well, that was the case for a while. And I mentioned I finished college and I stopped studying, and instead of only putting like 40-50% of my effort towards pickleball, I've been putting 100%, everything I have, to pickleball. And when I started doing that a couple months ago, when I started giving everything to pickleball, changed my training routine, changed my diet, like serious diet change. Like I had a good diet, but no, I didn't. I'm training just as hard as any other pro athlete. I believe I am. I'm doing everything I can. And I think that's what makes me a pro athlete. And it's great. It's a great feeling. Because, you know, just being better than people, like, does that really make you a pro athlete? Like, I think it's having to work for something, which I love. And as far as who I travel with, you know, I don't mind traveling alone, and I travel alone as the last few months. Parents, they've been a big part of it. You know, they traveled with me everywhere. Shout out to my mom.
Yeah.
Junior tennis, we would travel. Man, we spent so many years in hotels, and so I'm already used to this. Now I'm just doing it by myself.
I know that all too well, my friend. Traveling around, mommy helping me get me the right sandwich, all that stuff. Yeah. Oh yeah. So, last question before I let you go. You were mentioning the practice. You had it on, but describe to me. And has Ben Johns lost at all this year? Besides, how many times has he lost? Do you even know? Like, I can't even.
Yeah. He's lost, I think, once with Colin.
Yeah.
And that was like a major upset against like a team outside the top 20, which is crazy. He's lost once with Annalee, once without Annalee. So 3 times in doubles, as far as I'm aware of. And then he's lost 3 times in singles, once to me. So he's got like an over 90% win rate.
So you beat him in the quarters. Do you feel like you naturally are going to have a lull and lose in the semis? I mean, you try not to, and you get all pumped up. Is it tough to come back?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. And so the first tournament of this year was the Masters Hyundai in California, and I beat Tyson McGuffin in the round of 16. At the time, he's ranked two. He's ranked two in singles. So he's right there with Ben Johns. He's beaten Ben Johns. Like, so it's just as big of a win. Not actually, but right there. And the next match, I bombed it. I played terrible. So, having already gone through that, I had built experience to where I kind of knew what I was getting into. And I lost the semis 11-9 in the third. I had a lot of opportunities. It could have gone either way. I fought till the end.
Well, Christian, listen, it's great for you to have the time. I appreciate the time. I'm glad we could work it out. And listen, when you're in Jersey, if you play the tournament, come by, get some time, get some free time to play, whatever you need. It'd be fun to have you come out and say hello. It's close. We're close to where the tournament would be. So keep in touch. We're going to be rooting for you, my friend. And I hope all goes well.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. It was an honor to have me.
That was good stuff. Good stuff. Good luck. Keep in touch. I'll talk to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you.
Hey, everybody. Hope you like the podcast. Please share it with your friends, anybody that you know, anybody that's into tennis, anybody that's into bettering themselves. Share it.